We begin in Turkey, where at least 8 people have died as efforts continue to put out forest fires around the country. The government says 125 out of the 132 fires are now under control, and many people have now started returning to their communities. Over the weekend, tourists were evacuated on rescue boats after fires threatened hotels in the Aegean resort town of Bodrum. Hasan Abdullah reports from Manavgat along Turkey's Mediterranean coast.
2 days after evacuation, Ali Özel has returned to what remains of his house.
The fire started in our neighborhood. It started in 4 or 5 places and then spread because of the wind. We moved our animals and vehicles to other villages.
Others here have similar stories. There are 45 houses in Ali Özen's village. 6 of them have been gutted. But the villagers say they were fortunate enough to leave on time. Some of them have moved in with relatives, while others have taken to government shelters. With the fires now put out in this area, residents are returning. But there's much work to be done, including restoration of electricity supply. Shared grief is encouraging the spirit of volunteerism. Reyhan Yüksel's grandfather died in the blaze. She now wants to help others. People from across the country are sending food to the disaster zone.
Since I lost my grandfather in the fire in our village, I've been in the field fighting the fires so that other grandfathers do not lose their lives. I'm asking all young people and all Turkish people to help. We're just asking for help right now.
Others have joined the firefighters. The government says it will compensate people for their losses. Ali Özel says he's had a visit from officials and now hopes to give life another chance.
The fires have affected communities along the Mediterranean and Aegean coastlines, which are popular tourist destinations. Before the blazes, Turkey's tourism numbers had rebounded, with more than 4 million visitors to the country in the second quarter. Their collective spending boosted quarterly tourism revenue by 22.5% to more than $3 billion. Istanbul attracted the most visitors in the first 6 months of the year, followed by the Mediterranean resort of Antalya. Meanwhile, Turkey's exports rose 10% year-on-year to $16.4 billion in July, driven by strong recoveries in the steel and automotive sectors. That's taken the country's 12-month rolling foreign sales above $200 billion for the first time. Analysts expect demand to strengthen further in the third quarter as pandemic-related restrictions are eased further. Let's get more on this now with Economist Taha Arvas, who joins us from Istanbul. Good to have you back with us, Taha. These fires have raged across Turkey since Wednesday, burning down forests and homes. And as we saw there, we saw tourists being evacuated from resort towns. I'm wondering, how unusual is it to see fires on this scale in the country?
It is very unusual. I think what's interesting about these events isn't that there are forest fires. There are forest fires everywhere around the world, as you know. Last year was specifically a very bad year for forest fires across Canada, the United States, and Australia. But in Turkey, this specific event was kind of a perfect storm because there were forest fires in 30 different provinces. So that they all happened at the same time was a major problem. Having said that, as you just mentioned, all but a handful of fires have been put out. So it looks like we may have passed the difficult period here, and things may be back under control now.
So over the weekend, we did see holiday makers being evacuated from their hotels by a flotilla of boats as fires swept through tourist destinations in Antalya and in Muğla. How much of a setback is this to the tourism sectors in those areas, given that they were really only starting to get back on their feet during the pandemic?
Right. Well, I just checked the recent data, and according to Hotel Runner, in July, Turkey met and barely surpassed the pre-pandemic area for July. So this July is better than the 2019 July that we saw 2 years ago. So will this discourage tourists and vacationers in August and in September? Perhaps, but I think the ability to get these fires under control quickly may allow for that loss to be mitigated. If this had gone on for several other weeks, I think that may have been a major issue. But this is a small blip. Obviously, the loss of life is immeasurable. But as far as data goes, it's a small blip, and hopefully it'll be made up in the coming weeks and months here.
Now, in some better news, Turkish exporters have managed to achieve their best July sales date in history. It's, as I mentioned earlier, the 12-month rolling export figure topped $200 billion for the first time ever. Can you tell us, how did we get to this point? What's behind these numbers?
Right. I think that number is huge. Turkey's goal for 2022 was a little less than 200 billion. So Turkey's already surpassed its 2022 goal a year ahead of time with these numbers. The way we got here, I think, is ironically can be attributed to the pandemic, only because Turkey was very efficient in weathering the pandemic. Its ability to both exercise lockdowns that were staggered, the rollout of vaccinations quickly across the country, allowed for much of industry to stay open throughout the pandemic. So that moved supply chains from other countries to Turkey. Production was moved in many industries to Turkey, and that allowed, like I said, Turkey to flourish, ironically, during the pandemic. But perhaps if some of these movements can be sticky and stay in Turkey, it'll bode well for the country going forward in the future.
Okay, Taha Arvas, we'll have to leave it there, but really good to get your analysis. Thank you again for joining us on the program.